Hi, I'm Marcia Matthews, and I'm reading today from The Stranger in the Woods, The Extraordinary Story of the Last True Hermit. It was published by Michael Finkel in 2017 and is a true story. The trees are mostly skinny where the hermit lives, but they're tangled over giant boulders with deadfall everywhere like pickup sticks. There are no trails. Navigation for nearly everyone is a thrashing, branch-snapping ordeal, and at dark the place seems impenetrable. This is when the hermit moves. He waits until midnight, shoulders his backpack and his bag of break-in tools, and sets out from camp. A penlight is clipped to a chain around his neck, but he doesn't need it yet. Every step is memorized. He threads through the forest with precision and grace, twisting, striding, hardly a twig broken. On the ground there are still mounds of snow. Springtime, central Maine. But he avoids all of it. He bounds from rock to root to rock without a boot print left behind. One print, the hermit fears, might be enough to give him away. A boot print, if you're truly committed, is therefore not allowed, not once. Too risky. So he glides like a ghost between the trees until he emerges at the rocky shoreline of a frozen pond. It has a name, Little Pond, though the hermit doesn't know it. He stripped the world to his essentials, and proper names are not essential. He knows the season intimately, its every gradation. He knows the moon, a sliver less than half tonight, waning. Typically he'd await the new moon. Darker is better. But his hunger had become critical. He knows the hour and the minute. He's wearing an old wind-up watch to ensure that he budgets enough time to return before daybreak. He doesn't know, at least not without calculating, the year or the decade. He knows the whole hopscotch for miles, all around Little North Pond and then to the farthest reaches of North Pond itself. He passes a dozen cabins, modest wood-sided vacation homes, unpainted, shut tight for the off-season. He's been inside many of them. Now is not the time. For nearly an hour he continues, still attempting to avoid footprints or broken branches. Some roots he stepped on so often that they're worn smooth from repetition. Even knowing this, no tracker could ever find him. He stops just before reaching his destination, the Pine Tree Summer Camp. A couple of cars are in the lot, as usual. Still, he waits. You can never be too cautious. Eventually, he's ready. Motion-detecting floodlights and cameras are scattered around the pine tree grounds, installed chiefly because of him. But these are a joke. Their boundaries are fixed. Learn where they are and keep away. The hermit zigzags across the camp and stops at a specific rock, turns it over, grabs the key hidden beneath, and pockets it for later use. Then he climbs a slope to the parking lot and tests each vehicle's doors. A Ford pickup opens. He clicks on his penlight and peeks inside. Candy, always good. 10 rolls of Smarties tossed in the cup holders. He stuffs them in another pocket. He also takes a rain poncho, unopened and in its packaging, and a silver-colored Armatron analog watch. It's not an expensive watch. If it looks valuable, the hermit will not steal it. He has a moral code. But extra watches are important. When you live outside with rain and snow, breakage is inevitable. He vectors past a few more motion cameras to a back door of the dining hall. There he sets down his canvas gym bag of break-in tools and unzips it. Inside is a pair of putty knives, a paint scraper, a Leatherman multi-tool, several long-necked flathead screwdrivers, and 3 backup flashlights. He knows this door. It's already scraped and dented from his work, and he selects a screwdriver and slots it into the gap between the door and the frame, near the knob. One expert twist, and the door pops open, and he slips inside. Pen light on, clamped in his mouth. He's in the large camp kitchen, light flashing over stainless steel. He removes his backpack and scans the metal shelves. He grabs two tubs of coffee and drops them into his pack. Also some tortellini, a bag of marshmallows, a breakfast bar, and a pack of Humpty Dumpty potato chips. What he really desires is at the other end of the kitchen, and he heads there now, takes out the key he'd collected from beneath the rock, and inserts it into the handle of the walk-in freezer. The handle turns, and he enters the freezer, and the evening's entire mission, all the meticulous effort, feels immediately rewarded. He is deeply, almost dangerously hungry. Back at his tent, his edible supplies are a couple of crackers, some ground coffee, and a few packets of artificial sweetener. That's it. If he'd waited much longer, he would have risked becoming tent-bound from weakness. He shines his light on boxes of hamburger patties and blocks of cheese, bags of sausage, and packs of bacon. His heart leaps and his stomach calls, and he sets upon the food, loading it into his backpack, smorgasbord. Meanwhile, Terry Hughes' wife nudges him awake, and he hears the beeps, and he's out of bed like a spring uncoiled, game on. Quick check on the monitor, and then a dash down the stairs, where everything's in place. Gun, flashlight, cell phone, handcuffs, sneakers. It's full speed ahead toward the dining hall, hurdling boulders, dodging trees, then a crouching scuttle to an exterior window, heart pulsing like a hummingbird's from his bed to the window in 4 minutes flat. Hughes takes a breath. Then he cautiously lifts his head and steals a peek through the window, straining his eyes against the dimness of the pine tree kitchen. And he sees it. A person carrying a flashlight, the pale beam emanating from the open door of the walk-in freezer. Could this really, after all these years, be him? It must be. Hughes is still in his pajama pants, and he pats the clip-on holster of his waistband to make sure. Yes, his weapon's there, a little Glock 357 SIG, loaded, no safety switch. The beam brightens, and Hughes tenses, and out of the freezer steps a man, hauling a backpack. He's not quite what Hughes expected. The man is bigger, for one thing, and cleaner, his face freshly shaved. He's wearing large, nerdy eyeglasses and a wool ski cap. He roams the kitchen, seemingly unconcerned, selecting items as if in a grocery store. Hughes permits himself a flicker of satisfaction. There are rare moments in law enforcement, as Sergeant Hughes knows. He's been a Maine game warden for 18 years, and before that, for nearly a decade, he was a U.S. Marine. A few weeks previous, Hughes had resolved to end the reign of the hermit. He knew that none of the usual police methods were likely to work. After a quarter-century of intermittent investigations, including foot searches, flyovers, and fingerprint dusting, conducted by 4 separate law enforcement agencies, no one had even figured out the hermit's name. He found some acquaintances working border patrol up at Rangeley. It turned out that one of the guys had new Homeland Security equipment, devices that offered a better method of tracking people to sneak across the borders. And soon, 3 Border Patrol agents were tromping around the pine tree kitchen. Then he waited. It took 2 weeks. The beeps came shortly after 1 o'clock in the morning. All that, plus luck, for this perfect law enforcement moment. Hughes spies through the window as the burglar methodically fills his pack. He has him dead to rights, and at the pine tree camp no less. Pine Tree caters to children and adults with physical and developmental disabilities. It's a nonprofit organization run off donations. What kind of a guy breaks into a summer camp for disabled people over and over? Hughes eases away from the building, keeping his head low, and quietly makes a cell phone call. Game wardens don't typically work burglary cases. Usually it's more illegal hunters or lost hikers, and this effort has been chiefly a spare time obsession. He asked the dispatch officer of the Maine State Police to alert Trooper Diane Vance. His idea is to let Vance handle the arrest and the paperwork. He returns to the window to keep guard. As Hughes watches, the man cinches his pack and heaves it to his shoulders. He departs the kitchen and disappears from Hughes's view into the vast, empty dining room. He's moving toward an exit. Instinctively, Hughes maneuvers around the building to the spot where the man seems to be headed. Hughes is without help, deep in the night, seconds away from a potentially violent encounter. It's a complicated instant, a fraught decision. He is as prepared as possible for whatever might happen. Fist fight to shootout. Hughes is 44 years old, but still as strong as a rookie. No way he's going to step aside and let the intruder go. The opportunity to disrupt a felony in progress overrides all concerns. The burglar, Hughes thinks, is probably a military vet and therefore likely armed. Maybe this guy's combat ability is as good as his forest skills. Hughes holds his position by the door, Glock in his right hand, flashlight in his left, his back against the building's wall. He waits until he hears a small clink and sees the door handle turning. The burglar steps out of the dining hall, and Hughes flips on his mag light, blazing it directly into the man's eyes, and trains the .357 square in the center of his nose. Steadying his gun hand atop his flashlight hand, both arms extended, while ferociously bellowing a single phrase: "Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!" Meanwhile, as Diane Vance drives through the dark toward the Pine Tree camp, all she knows is that Terry Hughes is in a risky situation, without backup, pursuing a man with an amazing ability to disappear. Around a corner of the building, she sees a scattered mess of food and a man lying on his stomach, arms behind his back. The officers guide the man into a sitting position, then help him to his feet. They pull everything out of his pockets, a pile of Smarties, the Armatron watch, the keychain, and check his backpack and gym bag for weapons. He could be a bomber, a terrorist, a murderer. The officers have no idea. They find only a leather man. Hughes and Vance drag a metal-framed chair and table, and they sit the suspect down, hands still locked behind his back. The expression on his face appears blank and calm. It's unsettling. A person who has just been arrested after a sudden encounter should not be silent and impassive. The man is wearing new-looking blue jeans, a hooded gray sweatshirt beneath a nice Columbia jacket, and sturdy work boots. It's like he's just gone shopping at the mall. His backpack is from L.L. Bean. Only his eyeglasses, with chunky plastic frames, seem outdated. There's no dirt on him anywhere, and little more than a shading of stubble on his chin. He has no noticeable body odor. His thinning hair, mostly covered by a wool cap, is neatly cropped. Vance, like many officers who search for the hermit, always suspected that most of the story was mythical. Now she feels more certain. No way did this guy emerge from the woods. He has a home somewhere, or a hotel room, and was just coming around to burglarize places. There's a lot of commotion in the room, and the suspect's composure starts to fade. He remains seated and quiet, but is soon visibly suffering, his arms shaking. Hughes has an idea. His confrontation with the man had been threatening, but perhaps Vance can create a calmer atmosphere. For a little while, she lets the air in the dining hall settle. She has followed this case, intrigued for the entirety of her 18 years on the force. She switches the handcuffs so the man's arms are in front and he can sit more comfortably. Hughes comes out with bottles of water and a plate of cookies. Vance removes the handcuffs completely. The man takes a drink. Calmly, evenly, Vance reads him his rights. He has the right to remain silent. She asks for his name. "My name is Christopher Thomas Knight," says the hermit. "Date of birth?" "December 7th, 1965. The sounds passing through his mouth are stuttery and clanky, an old engine struggling to turn over, each syllable a chore. "Age?" The man is quiet again. His name and his birthday are durable relics lodged in his brain. Years he's proven are disposable, so he starts doing the math, uncurling his fingers to keep track. Okay, but what year is it now? It's 2013, Thursday, April 4th. Christopher Knight is 47 years old. "Address?" asks Vance. "None," says Knight. "Where's your mail sent?" "No mail." "What address do you put on your tax return?" "No tax returns." "Where's your vehicle?" "No vehicle." "Who do you live with?" "No one." "Where do you live?" "The woods." "How long have you been living in the woods?" "Decades," he answers. Vance would prefer something more specific. Since what year, she presses. Once more with the years, he's made the decision to talk, and it's important to him to speak strictly the truth. He remembers something. "What year," he asks, "was the Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster?" Vance thumbs her phone. "Chernobyl was in 1986. "That's when I took to the woods," says Knight. 27 years ago. He was not long out of high school, and now he's a middle-aged man. He says he passed the time living in a tent. "Where?" asks Vance. "Where did you stay during the winter?" Vance asks. He remained in his small nylon tent, he insists, and did not once in all those winters light a fire. Smoke might give his campsite away. Each autumn, he says, he stockpiled food at his camp, then didn't leave for 5 or 6 months, until the snow had melted enough for him to walk through the forest without leaving prints. Vance needs a moment to consider this. Winters in Maine are long and intensely cold. A wet, windy cold, the worst kind of cold. A week of winter camping is impressive. An entire season is practically unheard of. Vance asks Knight to estimate how many times he burglarized cabins or houses or camps. There's a protracted silence while Knight seems to be calculating. 40 times a year, he eventually says, over each of the last 27 years. Now it is Vance's turn to do the math. The total's more than 1,000, 1,080 to be exact, each of them felonies. It's almost certainly the biggest burglary case in the history of Maine. Possibly, in terms of number of separate break-ins, the largest in the country, maybe the world. Vance explains that he will have to forfeit all of the stolen material he possesses. She asks Knight to claim what is his. "Everything is stolen," he says. His backpack, his boots, his break-in tools, the entirety of his campsite, and all the clothes he is wearing, right down to his underwear. "The only thing I can honestly say is mine He states, "Are my eyeglasses?" Vance asks if he has any family in the area. I would rather not answer that," he says. He doesn't know if his parents are alive or dead. He has not been in contact with anyone, but if they are alive, he hopes they never learn that he's been found. Vance asks why. Knight says that he wasn't raised to be a thief. He says that he is ashamed. The end.